All right. So we're going to start with episode 2 of the Web3 webinar. Thank you guys for joining. Today, we're going to talk about DAOs and specifically what is a DAO. We're going to talk about the different nuances and the different ways you can participate in a DAO, how you can engage in a DAO, and what the future has in store for this specific innovation. Save your questions for the end. You can just keep throwing questions into the chat, and then I'll address them at the end. So a DAO stands for a Decentralized Autonomous Organization. It's an internet-native organization where the management is decentralized and the decisions are autonomous thanks to its programmed logic. What that means is that we take the logic, like the management layer of some logic. So let's say you have a boardroom where there's 6 decision makers. And what happens is that the boardroom gets an input. So let's say you're running a soda company and the soda company gives you an input that, let's say, sales are down. So what kind of logic needs to take place in the boardroom is what you would encode into a DAO. So basically, let's say you get an input that says soda sales are down. So the boardroom crunches some logic, all the board members crunch some logic, they have some discussions and presentations, and then they come up with a couple of suggestions for outputs, which is it could be increase marketing, increase quality, reduce prices, something along those lines. That would be the output, and that would be the set of instructions for the company to follow. So DAO does something similar where it's just a series of logic, and it takes certain inputs from various locations, and based on those inputs, it gives an output. In simpler terms, maybe we'll walk through an example today of a DAO, a simple DAO that buys and sells NFTs. So I'll use that as an example going forward. DAOs are hosted on blockchain platforms, so that makes them decentralized, and it allows for a decentralized form of control. And blockchain enables DAOs to have decentralized leadership and management as well, where the entire community takes a decision instead of one person or a very small handful of people. So decisions about governance, and the rules of a DAO are made by the community associated with the project. A DAO is designed around a mission, like any other organization. I'll just get into an example to describe this better. I'll just finish the slide first. And a DAO's business logic or operational logic is programmed into it. It's tweaked and updated by the community as they see fit. And a DAO is meant to act as a managerial layer. So let's take an example where a group of people are buying and selling NFTs. And they have a certain set of specifications, and they encode all those specifications. So what they do in essence is create a DAO that buys and sells NFTs. What you could do is you could say there's 50 conditions, and once an NFT meets 45 of these 50 conditions, for example, go ahead and buy the NFT. And when the NFT that you've purchased meets one of 3 conditions, let's say it hits a certain price or falls below a certain price or does something else, something very specific, then go ahead and sell the NFT. So we've taken all of our logic that we'd use as people, and we've just turned that into code. And now we put it on a blockchain layer. So all that logic, that business logic, just sits there in the blockchain layer, and it's ready to start executing the code when specific conditions are met. So the last part of a DAO is that once you put it on a blockchain, instead of the 3 people who created the logic, everyone who's participated in the project on the blockchain becomes the governance committee. And when I say participated in the project, I literally mean people who've put money toward the DAO. So the code that sits on the blockchain needs some money to be able to, or some crypto to be able to execute its functions. For example, if it needs to buy, if a certain NFT meets its conditions, it needs to go ahead and purchase it. So a DAO has an inbuilt treasury that allows for the DAO to proceed to actually finish their operations online. To operate online, it needs a little bit of money. And the community that buys into a DAO stakes its money into that treasury. So the DAO uses the treasury to perform the actions that are described in the code. Does that make sense? If it doesn't make sense, throw it into the questions and I'll address it at the end as well. So users get voting rate. So let me talk about staking in more depth for a second. An example is a bank. So you could buy the token of a DAO. So you could buy like the equivalent in the real world would be buying stock in a bank. So buying the shares of a bank that's publicly listed. And the alternative to staking would be where you make a deposit. You create an account, you open an account with a bank, and then you deposit some money and you get interest on it. So in this case, when you stake your money into a treasury of a DAO, you're basically giving the money to the DAO to perform its actions. And if the actions are properly encoded, you'll make money. So you'll get some interest on it, or a dividend, if you will. And if you don't, then you're going to lose money. So people who've staked their money get the voting rights, and ensuring that the users are invested in a DAO. Because you don't want users to, without any stake in the process, to start calling the shots. So the best way to do it is requiring people to deposit some money before they can create new proposals to update the code or vote on different mechanisms and stuff like that. Participate in the DAO in different forms. Tokens are meant to incentivize user behavior. DAOs by design have inbuilt treasuries. We just spoke about those treasuries. Currently, they mostly hold crypto, but I think soon they'll be able to hold fiat currency-based stablecoins as well. DAOs exist on public blockchains and can be viewed by anyone. That's a very important point. So they're transparent. Anyone can go and see a logic of a DAO that's hosted on a public blockchain. You can go and check out the code, check out the logic, check out what they do in the back. So DAOs operate using smart contracts. Smart contracts are basically the backbone of DAOs. All of the interactions, relationships, API calls, everything is designed through smart contracts. And smart contracts can be programmed to execute different layers of complex or simple logic based on a triggering event. A triggering event is when something happens that triggers a smart contract. So let's say the price of an NFT, or an NFT meets 45 out of 50 conditions. That could be a triggering event for the code to kick in and go ahead and purchase that NFT. So specific criteria that's defined before, once that criteria is met, that is the triggering event. It could even be like the price of a stock or commodity. So like, let's say when petroleum hits $100, then go ahead and buy it. Or if petroleum goes below $60, sell it. Something of that sort. So those could be triggering events as well. A smart contract can be triggered when a signal from an external or real world action is generated. This usually happens through sensors or inputs, sometimes oracles. And oracles are the format in which that data is communicated to the DAO from the real world, or a world external to the DAO's environment. Through smart contracts and oracles, data is fed into a DAO. It is then processed using a DAO's logic and business rules, followed by which instructions are sent out to be executed in the real world. So basically, it's the same thing where a board of directors gets a certain input, they crunch some logic, and then they have a certain output. The output is in the form of instructions or what to do next. So the same thing happens in a DAO, where data and information flows into a DAO, and decisions and instructions flow out of a DAO. And the beauty of the whole thing is that it's automated because you've already fed in every situation you can think of. So it's automated. Once the DAO's sitting on a blockchain, the community can go home and just monitor it remotely once in a while. They don't have to be actively involved. This is a major point as well. So legality and the jurisdiction of DAOs. They currently exist on blockchain platforms, which exist kind of everywhere. And they could have, they currently don't have much legislative requirements. I know that some jurisdictions are toying with the idea of allowing DAOs to register. I know Wyoming is one of them. So they have some sort of registration that allows you to incorporate a DAO. But I think currently DAOs exist online as of this recording. But soon, I think like within the next year or a couple of years, there is going to be some legislation around this. So you are going to be, I'm guessing you're probably going to be required to choose a jurisdiction. There are several jurisdictions in the Cayman Islands. I think that was one. There's a couple of other offshore jurisdictions that also are trying to incentivize DAOs incorporating there. A DAO could also have operations across multiple jurisdictions. So the code could just sit online, but it could sell and buy something in different jurisdictions. So the local compliance there in the specific format in which the DAO engages with the local environment all the compliance needs to be done there. As DAOs go mainstream, the regulators across the world are going to require them to incorporate and register themselves in some form. I think that's coming pretty soon. So that's something to look out for as well. There are three primary ways to get involved with a DAO. The first is to volunteer, and this means just work on ad hoc projects, work as and when the community requires. Let's say they need you to help out with a website design or a white paper or something else. You don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to be highly technical to get involved. You could just, if you're super interested, you could kind of get involved in different ways. The second way is you could buy in. So you could actually just buy into a DAO in the sense you could either buy a DAO's tokens, or what I would suggest is rather than tokens, if you really want to understand the nuances of the DAO, then go ahead and stake some money, stake some crypto into the DAO. So what happens there is that you put your money in the treasury of the DAO and you get voting rights in return. This allows you to vote on their protocols, on their protocol updates, as well as suggest your own. In case you think there's something that could be done better in the code, you could suggest that as well. Of course, each DAO has its set of rules of how you can participate. And lastly, you should the way to get involved is you could start a DAO of your own. So it usually works really well when there's a community of people rallying around a specific cause or a specific topic. So that works really well. So if you kind of have that community or you're part of that community, it might make sense to organize yourself as a DAO. That's a pretty interesting way to do it. And that's somewhere where our INX Technologies, our company, can help. We can help you codify all of your business logic, or let's say it's charitable logic or something else. And we could help you kind of choose a blockchain platform and put that online. As I said earlier, successful DAOs emerge from online groups and communities that rally around a mission or a cause. So there's three primary steps in launching a DAO. The first stage is development, where a developer or a group of developers create smart contracts that govern the DAO's business logic. Next, the DAO needs to specify how to receive funds and enact governance. So just figuring out the treasury and the rules around the treasury, as well as the governance mechanisms. And lastly, the DAO needs to be deployed on a blockchain. And what happens then is once it's deployed on a blockchain, the community of developers that created the DAO, they step back, and the blockchain people who have, the users on the blockchain who've actually deployed money into the treasury, they step forward. So it becomes truly decentralized in a sense once you launch it on the blockchain. Those are the three primary steps to start a DAO. DAOs help, there are several benefits. I'm going to talk about two primary ones. DAOs help eliminate centralized control and opaque governance mechanisms. So this means that the governance mechanisms and the code is transparent and clear for everyone to see. And centralized control is gone, so now it's a group vote. Everyone's in charge, everyone's got their money on the line, and everyone's involved. And the second thing is, I think that it's going to have a significant impact for data processing, government, healthcare, law enforcement, voting, and several other use cases. I think one of the big things that's going to happen soon is that you're going to see hybrid forms of DAOs in the government, and you're going to see hybrid forms of DAOs in private enterprise. So a small example could be a DAO that exists. When I say hybrid DAO, I mean a DAO that just exists for a specific process within a company. So let's say I have a bakery and all my processes are manual, except once that I have a loaf of bread ready, I put it on this conveyor belt, and that conveyor belt is internally, like within my operation floor. That conveyor belt is just called the quality control DAO, and there's no human intervention. So I could just put I could just put like the loaf of bread on one end of this conveyor belt, and then it enters the quote unquote DAO. And as it goes down this conveyor belt, there's a series of sensors, cameras, different forms of input being received, different forms of data being captured about the loaf of bread. So it's being tested through different sensors and mechanisms, and all of that data related to that specific loaf of bread are saved in one instance on the blockchain. And it could be an internal blockchain, it could be a private blockchain. And by the time it reaches the end of the conveyor belt, the program automatically tells me that does this loaf of bread pass quality control, yes or no? And it has the data to back it up. So I can go back anytime and be like, nope, from batch number X and loaf number Y, it did pass quality control, and these are the specifics of that loaf of bread. And then when it comes out the other end, it says pass, so it's good to now go on the shelves or to go out to market. And that internal process is just like a small autonomous, it's like a small DAO process within a larger manual or traditional process. So that's what I say when I mean hybrid. That's what I mean when I say hybrid DAO. So I think hybrid DAOs where a specific function or a specific micro function within a larger set of operations could be automated and put into a DAO format. These are some notable DAOs. I would encourage you guys to check this out. Once I'll make this presentation public as well, so you guys can click through any of these or just Google any of these names. MakerDAO is one of the big ones. Metacartel is huge. Then there's some also there's like Moloch DAO is pretty interesting. Aave is cool. Opolis, Proof of Humanity. These are the ones that I think are notable. There's of course hundreds of DAOs out there, so I would advise you to go ahead and do your own research as well. So I just wanted to talk about some risks before we wrap up. If there's a few primary risks. The first is it's still crypto based. So if you lose your cryptographic keys, it could result in dormant accounts holding tokens of the DAO, and you losing your investment in a DAO. Faulty or buggy code is a big risk, definitely. And another subsection of that is incomplete smart contract code, or there could be situations that arise in the operations of a DAO where the situation or the resolution of a situation, a very rare situation in some cases, the resolution mechanism hasn't been agreed upon, so it could be incomplete. The code could be incomplete, and when that happens, what do you do then? So it really slows down the process. All of a sudden, like operations come to a halt, and everything comes to a halt as you figure out how to address that specific issue within a DAO. If and when such an issue should arise. So that's the risk with incomplete code. So when we say complete the code, we mean you should address every eventuality or have some sort of a grievance mechanism or a mechanism that addresses something when something that unexpected happens. Of course, it's not that easy to see, but in most cases, like there's some checks and measures you could have in place. There's no widely accepted legal frameworks as of this presentation. So it's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But we would advise that just take a look at different jurisdictions, have a plan ready for when regulation comes. Regulation is going to look very similar. They're going to require you to choose a jurisdiction and register in some sort of a legal format. I'd say like an LLP or an LLC, but it could be a completely new form, which is Wyoming, for example, allows you to register as a DAO. So just kind of like keep an idea or come up with an idea of what you would do when regulation hits. And the primary thing is like once you have your DAO ready, do a lot of testing. So test your code, make sure you have everything planned, make sure you have a grievance mechanism in place, think about jurisdictions, and just complete your code. In conclusion, DAOs offer a new organization and management style that is distributed, transparent, and automated. They offer collective risk and collective reward, and it's a community-based form of a corporation. You can think about it this way. When corporations were formed, like the idea of corporations were formed, it's over 200 or 300 years old. Imagine if you were to form a corporation today. There's so much technology that you have. There's so many different mechanisms and things that you have that could create a corporation. It could all just be digital. It could exist across blockchain platforms. So just think of it like the corporation. If you were to create a corporation in the metaverse, that's what I think of a DAO. So it's like a corporation or a company or an organization or a foundation in the metaverse or in the world of tomorrow. So that's kind of how I picture DAOs. And lastly, DAOs are evolving fast. This is a really rapidly evolving field. I think the biggest changes we're going to see, which are going to shape how DAOs end up taking their final shape, is the range of peripheral technologies such as IoT devices, connectivities, smart contracts, cryptocurrencies, different sensors, oracles, stuff like that. And they'll help enhance the complexity and the range of what a DAO will be capable of doing in the future. So that's something to really look out for. Again, we can help. INX Technologies is a software development company, a Web3 software development company, and my name is Sean Ray. I am the head of Web3 partnerships. These are my contact details below. Feel free to get in touch if you're looking to build a DAO, if you're looking to update the code in a DAO, if you're just looking to learn more, or a consulting session or something of that sort. We can help you build it out, front end, back end, the works. So please go ahead and get in touch. And if you have any questions, I'll address them now. All right, no questions so far. Feel free to just drop me a message on Twitter, Telegram. You can connect with me on email or LinkedIn as well. And if you just want to learn more about the company, you can go to ionxtech.com. That's INX with a double X in the middle. And if you have any questions related to this presentation or anyone before this, feel free to get in touch with me on either of these platforms. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great weekend.